friends. Welcome back to the Outskirts podcast with Tanner and friends. I'm Tanner, and I am really excited to share this next interesting interview. If Cameron Crowe had aspired to make a really good film about a slightly more principled, decidedly more erudite, and extremely more English Hunter S. Thompson, as he wades through the sometimes wonderful, more oft dreadful morass of the 90s popular music scene, he'd have been making a movie about journalist James Delingpole. And that was just the start of his journalistic career. In the decades since, James has parlayed his talents to contribute his astute observations and keen commentary to extend beyond music and entertainment. I'm so thankful to have had the joy of speaking with him for the last 2 mornings, and I'm pleased to share our discussion with you. Please enjoy this very interesting chat with Mr. James Delingpole. Yeah, that's great. I'm going to record because the banter is
Yeah,
probably going to be
cool.
good.
I like the look of you, Tanner.
I like the look of you. I've been looking at you for years, though. So
Oh,
I,
yeah.
I've been with you since when did I find you? I don't know. You were still with the other guy on that. You had two shows going at once. Toby?
Toby.
Yeah, I've been with you that long.
What, Tanner, I'm so impressed. I'm
Well,
so impressed. That's quite niche for an American to
I'm
follow.
realizing that because people I share you around a lot, and
Oh,
you're
that's
not
good.
that well known here in the US, which is a shame, but I do my part to
I know.
popularize you.
Make me well known in the US. It's a much more
Unfortunately, I'm less known than you, of course, but
uh why are you wearing a John Denver t-shirt?
because I want to bring awareness to the fact that he was a CIA spy.
Was he?
I've heard something like that. I think he
You've
was
made
in
me
that
want to
Laurel
get a
Canyon book.
you've made me want to get a John Denver t-shirt now because I when at my dad's funeral, or rather at the wake, my brother and I did a sort of tribute in pictures and music, and we played some of the music that we used to listen to on my father's 8 track. You don't even remember 8 tracks, do you?
Oh yeah, I'm 47. I saw an 8 track once in a vehicle when I was little.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, well, this was my childhood. We used to listen to 8 tracks in my father's Jaguar. And the music we listened to, well, some of the stuff that really brought back memories were John Denver, Neil Diamond, who of course we now know is a complete pedo. Girl, you'll be a woman soon. And um, we had this weird, we were into Tom Paxton. You probably haven't even heard of him. Tom Paxton did this did a Nam era protest song called Jimmy Newman. And Jimmy Newman is lying in his hospital bed, awaiting the plane that's going to take them home. And his buddy is talking to him, saying, "Get up, Jimmy Newman." And of course, Jim is dead. But anyway,
Tragic.
one of the songs that we played was John
Country
Denver.
road. Take me home,
Uh,
country road.
no, it was had an uncle name of Matthew, was his father's only boy, uh, and it was all about this idyllic life in Kansas. Uh, what was it? Love was just a windy Kansas wheat field. Blue was just a Kansas summer sky. Something like that. Uh,
Well, props to you for not doing the country road. That's a very often requested song here, and I don't really get it because it's very West Virginia
are
centric.
you in West Virginia?
No, I'm in Texas, but I've begun a little busking. I'm teaching myself piano, and I've been playing guitar and singing. So if someone has a party, I'll invite myself to be the entertainment. And without fail, somebody will request Country Road, and I always decline.
I don't think it's a particularly good song.
I don't either. Yeah, but I think it's very simple, and once you hear it once, and you kind of know it. So I think for the people who aren't as musically inclined, it's just for some reason top of mind.
But Tanner, have you not got to the stage? I think you have got to the stage where you know basically that all pop music is satanic.
That's why
It's
I
just
wanted to begin with you. So I know we haven't a lot of time, but we were going to do a
Yeah.
little bio of you. But and as far as
Tanner,
your,
I'll come back. I'll come back and do more stuff. I'll tell you why. Because you were sleeping when I got my message saying, look, let's do it now. Let's do it. Let's strike while the iron is hot. And I'm an impulsive character. Because it can be weeks before I even reply to people's requests, and it's not any. I'm not trying to snub them or be superior or anything. It's just like I'm quite sketchy.
yeah,
Um, but I thought I'd seize the moment, but the thing is, I have my gym class later on, and I want to have time to have a quick cigarette with my wife before I go off to the gym class. That's all. So that's the only reason. So
got it.
anyway, ask me what you want to ask me.
Well, all right. I was going to ask you for so obviously there's the obvious choir to whom we'll be speaking, right? But for those we don't know who's listening, right? So if we were going to say,
Yeah.
James, what are your pop culture credentials? What kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
exposures have you had?
That's
I know you
that's
mingled in those circles, right? You were
so I
something like
have
you're like
Tanner.
the Anthony Bourdain of the UK, but with music instead of food. That's how
Do
I
you know what?
imagine.
That is kind of a good description. Except I don't want to end up like Anthony Bourdain hanging from a his what a doorknob in his bathroom.
Well, when they decide to finish you off, they'll make it look something along those lines, I
That's
imagine.
how
They'll
it
have to
happens.
discredit your whole body of work beforehand. Yeah, they do.
Yeah, yeah. Um. So the rock thing. Yeah, I was a music critic. Not classical, popular music. So yeah. For I'd say about 30 years, and I had all sorts of experiences. Where are you taking me?
My children's breakfast is ready. So I
Oh,
hear the
I
timer going
like
off.
that.
I'm
I
sorry.
like that. So yeah,
Chocolate croissants. All right. Sorry.
I was I was a very successful journalist in the mainstream media for a long time. And it wasn't because I was um, an evil agent of the Illuminati. It was basically because I'm really clever and funny and a good writer. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any point being falsely modest about
No, yeah. Of
that.
course
I've
not. Don't
got
apologize for
I'm
yourself. Yeah.
I'm completely shit at loads and loads of stuff, but I know what I'm good at. I am a good writer. And
Yeah.
it served me well because what it enabled me to do, which is given to very few people trying to make it in the media, is that I could decide exactly what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. So if people gave me a job that involved, I don't know, that made me feel uncomfortable, not interested. I did the cool stuff. So I was a music a record critic for many years. So for about I'd say certainly 15 years, I got every album going. And
What
what
decade did that begin? So I just want an
oh,
album to come to mind for me.
I think probably we're talking from maybe late, maybe no, mid 90s.
Oh wow.
Certainly from the mid 90s.
Okay.
So I was getting access to a lot of stuff that later became huge, but that for months did absolutely nothing. So, for example, The Killers. When the first Killers album came out, I'd been playing it in my house non-stop to my family and my friends for about a year before that album took off. I
Wow.
remember there was an album called did you ever discover Milk Hotel's album
Yes.
uh, in an aeroplane over the sea, was it called? Something like that. Again, I sort of helped to say to people, you've got to get this album. It's really weird, but it's really cool and it's essential. Loads and loads of stuff like that. So I not only got a really good record collection, I also got to go to endless gigs. I mean, I've seen pretty much everybody. Um, and I got to meet the stars. So I suppose my finest hour, as it were, the gig that makes a lot of people jealous
Yeah.
was this was in the days when newspapers had money to send you. They didn't cheese pair. So they had good budgets. I got sent out. Do you remember when Jimmy Page and Robert Plant did their sort of Page Plant reformation? And I think they had. Did they have John Bonham's son playing the drums? And they had Paul Thompson from The Cure doing the second lead guitar. So it was when they were playing Led Zeppelin songs like they were straight off the record because for the first time, because you had a second lead guitarist, you could get the effects that Jimmy Page had to overdub. And he could never have done it live. Um, so I got sent out to LA to interview Jimmy Page and Robert Plant. And being Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, they took ages. They could never agree to a time when we were going to do the interviews. I was kept waiting in true rock and roll style. And I got put up at a hotel called the Sunset Marquis, which is quite sort of rock and roll. And while I was waiting in the hotel, um, I was sitting by the pool every day, just reading books, and also sunbathing by the pool were the keyboard player and the bass player from the Black Crows. So I got friendly with them, and they said, "Well, do you want to come to our gig?" And I said, "Yeah, well, sure." And so I got to go to the Crows show, but also their after show party, and it was a very good after show party with very very good weed and just like good eats and good just as you would expect. It was very very cool. um and and yeah, and a friend called Marty, who I think was a record producer. I took him one night to see. I went to see Page and Plant play for 2 nights at that big arena stadium thing in LA. I can't remember what it was called. A big where they have big rock gigs.
Yeah, I don't know.
Uh, and as a reward for that, he took me to see, I don't know how much this means to you, PJ Harvey.
Yes.
At PJ Harvey and Tricky were playing at the Mayan in downtown LA.
So
And
PJ
that
Hart.
was,
So I graduated high school in 1997. So anything from the 90s, unfortunately, I lived in the Midwest and everything arrives there last, right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
there was a college radio station that we could pick up coming out of St. Louis. So, but yeah, PJ Harvey. I was kind of like a a gothic sound maybe.
Yeah, she what I think
Garth.
PJ Harvey is just brilliant. She's sort of ballsy girl, ballsy rock chick, quite sort of ragged voice. But there are some melodies in there. I think she's one of my all-time favorites. I must have seen her 6 or 7 times through her career, and I just think she's never disappointed me. And she has interesting different phases of her career, but you're never thinking, oh, she's jumped the shark this time, or she's got really boring. She's really good. Radiohead, I saw a hell of a lot because I was
Yeah.
a massive Radiohead fan for a
We
time.
could do a whole show on Radiohead.
We could do well. Perhaps let's. I won't tell you my Radiohead stories. Not that they're very exciting, but so I'm a massive Led Zeppelin fan, or I certainly was until I sort of. I mean, I still like their music, but I recognize that it really is pretty satanic. And
Does
and
it carry a sort of a spiritual yuckiness or something? When you
do,
want to
do,
listen
do
to
you
it
not
for
do you
enjoyment?
not find that?
I
I
do
do
find that. Yeah.
very much. And do you know what? The interesting thing is, I even knew it at the time. I've got this theory on music. Well, I'll tell you about it. I'll tell you about it in a minute.
Okay.
But first, I'll give you. I'll just treat you briefly to my rock and roll in LA with
Please.
Page and Plant
Yes.
experience. Finally, I get to get given quality time with Robert Plant, who, by the way, he was at school with my uncle. My uncle was his table monitor, his dinner table monitor. So he was like he was the guy in charge of ensuring that Robert Plant and the other people, juniors on the table, behaved themselves at lunch.
Don't throw your peas, Robert.
Yeah, exactly. Um, So that's how rock and roll my background is. Um,
Wow.
so I so I Plant picks me up in I think an open top sports car. I think it was a red Mustang or something. And so he drives me around LA with the hood down,
Wow.
playing this. What did he play me? I think he played me the original version of Money by is it Martha and the
Pink Floyd?
Vandellas?
Oh, Money. I was thinking Floyd.
That's what I want, you know. But
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The Beatles did that one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, the executive, the Beatles did a shit cover of it because
Yeah.
the Beatles were shit, and the Tavistock Institute, as we now know.
Amen.
Um, so we then went to a diner, and you know, normally when you interview, certainly now, I've noticed when journalists do interviews with famous people, rock stars, movie stars, it's normally on a junket where there's three or four journalists around a table, and you get maybe 15 minutes, and you've got a horrible PR person lurking on the interview, you know, saying no, he can't answer that question or whatever. This was in the time where it was just you and the main man for maybe 2 hours. So I spent, well, 2 hours driving around LA with Robert Plant and going to a diner and having just sitting in the diner with Robert Plant. The the Jimmy Page experience was very Jimmy Page-ish in that I was told that Jimmy Page might be ready to see me round at about midnight at the what's the really expensive, at the Four Seasons Hotel in LA. And so I was introduced to Jimmy Page, and he was sitting at the bar, and I thought the interview was going to start then, but it didn't. And he said, you know, just have whatever drink you want and stuff. So I mistakenly, I think, had a martini cocktail, which was a really bad thing to do because you know you need to be straight for an interview.
Yeah.
And anyway, by the time I did the interview, I was frankly wankered. I was totally I drank far too much. So it was a bit of a blur. I did ask him about the black magic stuff because having drunk so much alcohol, I was able to ask the questions that one's not supposed to ask. Um, he didn't give me a very satisfying answer. He just said, "Yeah, just man, we're just like, I'm just a seeker after truth," or something like that.
I wonder, did you feel manipulated by him in some way to make such a blunder?
The th-
Like
what
maybe
do you
he
mean?
was doing magic against you to get you to
Oh,
partake
sure.
in the first place.
Well,
He was,
Tanner, with hindsight, all this may well be the case. I mean, look, they put hexes on you, they do all sorts of things. Remember, for most of all my journalistic career as a mainstream media journalist, I was a normie. I didn't understand about all the kind of the spiritual undercurrents of the world, the way that we're manipulated by forces of evil. Um, I mean, with hindsight, looking back, I realized that there were moments where I had a sense of it. Um, and I think I had some kind of divine protection because um, I never, even though I had the kind of, oh, have I got milkshake, chocolate milkshake moustache? I think I may
no,
have.
no, it's
Huh.
just glisten. Oh, wait, actually, yes, I do see a
Yeah,
bit of
I think I
chocolate.
do. That is not that. Just to your listeners and viewers, that's not a kind of satanic evil symbol. That's just I had a chocolate milkshake.
You were at a
Um,
Cure concert last night, that's all.
that's right. So I I was really quite as media careers go. I was quite successful. I mean, I wasn't at the top, but I was a name. And you know, now I look at the mainstream media and I think, well, it's a propaganda machine for the elites, and it's how can people in it not know that they are serving the interests of truly evil people? At the time I was an innocent abroad, I was happy-go-lucky. I was just enjoying all the freebies, the free trips and stuff. I got to do cool stuff like go diving with great white sharks in a cage and go on motorbikes around the Isle of Man circuit and cool stuff, travel stuff, rock stuff, movie stuff. I met stars. I met John Travolta. Uh, what's the guy from the other guy from Pulp Fiction? Samuel T.
Yeah,
Jackson. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. People like Harrison Ford. Um, but even though I sort of operated in this milieu with people and encountered people who I now realize were just part of the kind of the satanic elite, as it were. I never, I never did anything that that sort of compromised me morally, or I never got, I think I was protected. I really feel like God had my back, that He had a plan for me, that He wanted to me to like shimmy through this world, but not be touched by it, not be just. I was kind of there to bear witness, but not to be corrupted, because He was saving me for doing what I do now, I suppose, which is just like spilling the beans on it all.
He knew how
Um,
you would use your free will, and it would, and for such a time as this, that other stuff, you needed to be there, and he kept you safe. Yeah,
that's what I believe.
yeah.
That's what I believe, because like you, I'm a kind of man of God. I believe in this crazy stuff. I believe that God made us in His image and He sent His only Son to die for us, die for our sins, and that this is the answer. Which is great, because it's good to be on the right team. Anyway, I was going to tell you briefly about my thoughts on Led Zeppelin, because I spent a lot of time listening to that music. I mean, I used to love. Wow, I mean, I used to take acid to. I got synesthesia once, where I could sort of see the music in the form of colors and stuff, and I could see sound and
You got it
uh,
temporarily while on acid, or you got it as like a lingering side effect?
no, I got it temporarily
Okay.
on acid. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then not as a lingering thing.
Okay.
I listened to those albums a lot, and what I found, even at the time when I loved this stuff, was that no matter how many times I listened to it, there was something melancholy about it, something energy sapping, something. It was it was not quite pleasure I was getting out of it. It was taking me to a place ultimately which wasn't joyous or even ecstatic. It was sort of a sense of kind of rudderlessness, of sort of um, mild sort of discomfort. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but I think, knowing what I know now, I think that that is what a lot of rock music does. It sort of in a way it's analogous to cocaine. It Coke, you think it's going to take you somewhere really fun, but actually what it does is take you to a place where you want more. And no matter how much more you take, you never feel you never feel great. It just leaves you feeling dissatisfied.
Yeah.
I think that that's something that music does. I think it reduces it, particularly young men. I
Mhm.
think it reduces them to a state um, of sort of fecklessness, where it stops them being productive. It becomes an end in itself, which takes you away from life, takes you away from the joy of life. I mean, I think it's no wonder that young men commit suicide. I think that's part of the purpose of music, of rock music. What it does is to induce this kind of, you know how Homer Simpson says that selling depression to teenagers is like shooting fish in a barrel. And I think there's
I didn't know
something in
that quote, but that's exactly right. Yeah.
I think that it's designed to. Have you come across Nick Drake?
Oh, yeah. Pink Moon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
there's a
Nick,
lot to do. There's a big to do made of him, but there's only a couple tracks I ever really got into. But I could feel the same kind of the black dog settling upon me as I listened to that music. Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
It's it makes you think of a kind of a wet Sunday afternoon, and you retreat into the house, and there's a fire there, but it's not giving off enough heat, and maybe your girlfriend's just left you, and you have a cigarette, and then another one, and you're feeling like, what's the purpose of your life? And I think that they love. promoting music like that because they want to get the, I think different music forms are targeted at different class groups and ethnic groups. So, for example, we know because there's somebody blew the whistle on this, that gangster rap was expressly designed to put black men in prison. It was
Yes.
to go, it was designed to make them aspire to a career lifestyle which would put them in prison. And that's what the system wanted because they wanted more people in these privately run prisons. They wanted to incarcerate black people. Um, I think that sort of middle class music like Pink Floyd is designed to reduce educated, potentially productive young men. It's designed to turn them into dropouts, design them to turn them away from having a decent career,
Yeah.
to become introspective, melancholy. And I knew these people. I mean, I know these. I'm friends with Dave Gilmour's wife, for
What?
example.
Okay. So you're
Yeah,
saying hanging on in quiet desperation is not the
it's
English way?
it's not hanging. See, this is exactly how the programming works, isn't it?
Yes.
Hanging on in quiet desperation is the English way. Well, okay, maybe that becomes true through repetition. Pink Floyd are telling you this,
Yeah.
but is it really true? I mean, if you were to go back into the 19th century, for example, the peak of the British Empire, and you'd said to a Victorian about to go and sort of open up a business in India, say, and you said to him, "Quiet desperation is the English way." Would he recognize that? I'm not sure that he would. I'm
Yeah.
not sure that he wouldn't recognize that as the sort of the quintessential element of Englishness. I think that w- culturally we are um, the people who run the world shape our culture using music, literature, um, film, and probably dance and art, certainly architecture.
Yeah.
Um, and depending what they're trying to achieve at any given time, th that will shape the nature of the culture. We think of culture as a kind of we imagine in our deluded state, our innocence, our naivety, that art is a reflection of the culture. It's not. It's not. They, the powers that be, create the culture.
That's
They
right.
because they have the money that decides who gets promoted, who doesn't get promoted. They decide, hey, in the early 20th century, they want modernism to be a thing, so they promote T.S. Eliot. Um, they promote Joyce. They create this. You have Stravinsky, The Rite of Spring. You have what happens in the 1970s? They turn us all towards drug culture. They want hippie dropouts. And so it goes on. But I think the purpose of music is not primarily entertainment, although that's what we imagine it to be.
That's been my observation. That yeah, exactly. Have you heard the term hip hop hypnosis? There's a guy that I sometimes he makes me chuckle on Instagram, but he's a Caucasian. He's a white American, and he has this sort of spoof page where he talks about having been transformed by hip hop music or gangster rap. And basically, it's just reel after reel of different people, you know, most of them white 20-something males who are in full regalia with sometimes golden teeth and face tattoos. And basically, he's saying the music did this. The music created this hypnosis in these white guys. And it happened to him, and he talks about coming out of it. And it's funny, but it's also obviously true.
Do you know that the team, the creative team that did all the covers for the classic albums, the Pink Floyd album, for example, the Dark Side of the Moon one with the prism, the light going
Mhm.
through the prism, the one uh, with the one with the man on fire on the cover. Do you know that one?
maybe that's another Pink Floyd one, or
All the classic albums of that era and beyond were designed by a company called Hypnosis, um, and they spelt it hypnosis,
G
as in
G.
Gnostic. Yeah,
Okay,
hypnosis.
that's where
Storm.
it all. Yeah. Oh
One of
wow.
them was called Storm Thorgerson, and I can't remember who the other guy was. Look, when you look into the backgrounds of these people, when you look at George Martin, for example, the guy at EMI who was brought in to kind of to be basically the Beatles handler.
Did he make a
He
lot of their music also? Isn't he credited on a lot of that
Yeah,
music?
yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, they were never going to get four stooges from Liverpool who basically had not very much musical skill or experience. They weren't they weren't just gonna.
It wasn't the 10,000 hours in that Hamburg basement club that did
They
it.
sell you the story, don't they? They
Yeah.
love that. They
Yeah.
love that. I mean, the Beatles. That's it's almost too much of a rabbit hole because it takes
Yeah,
up
yeah. And then you
so
have
much.
the Malcolm Gladwells who are propping it all up with statistics and, the pseudoscientists like Gladwell
It's
and
all fake.
Tyson with the stardust. Yeah. Yeah, it's all fake and very annoying. Yeah.
It is fake and annoying, but it's also kind of interesting having spent what the first 50 years of my life absorbing all this information and being just like because I was always interested in the culture and I wrote about the culture. I think your children going back
Hey
upstairs.
guys. Shh. All right.
No, I think it's sweet.
Oh yeah.
How old are
But
they?
that's my little one. So he's 8 and his buddy is 7. So got a couple of youngsters running around here.
That's
And then I
great.
have
That's
a daughter who is 13, and my son will be turning 15 next month. Yeah, my oldest son. Yeah.
that's really nice. I do kind of miss those days when my children weren't all sort of grown up and
I've been
well,
working on myself, the emotional regulation, all that stuff. It takes a while to get into the swing of parenting. I'm 15 years in, and I think I'm at the pinnacle of my ability to
you know the
enjoy.
terrible thing is, Tanner, you never stop worrying about them. You never stop worrying about them. Do you know what my stupid bloody son did the other day?
Please tell me.
He said, "Oh, Dad, I'm going to Ukraine. I'm going to I'm going to Kiev." Or maybe he pronounced it Kiev to annoy me. And I was thinking, why, you idiot? What are you doing it for? And he said, "Oh, I'm going it to try and improve my Russian." Really? Are there not better places you could have gone to, like, to improve your Russian? He said, "Yeah, but a mate of mine's going." And then do you know what happened? This was so stupid. So they get to Poland to go and ready to cross the border into Ukraine, and his friend is told by his employer that no, you can't go to Ukraine because that will jeopardize your job. So my son went on his own. And then he spent one night in this air raid shelter. And I'm thinking, what a dick. But at the same time, I thought, well, this is the kind of stupid thing that I would do to annoy my father when I was that age. My father went through all this. I think sons just do dickish things to annoy their fathers.
It's a sort of rebellion, right? Where
Yeah.
you're testing the theory that you're invincible, maybe. But yeah, this is great timing for this conversation because my son, who's I've been really trying to foster an interest in music. We had him in tuba. He learned to read music, which I never was able to do, and
Oh, nice.
he was actually really good. And it's the pressures to conform and be cool in public school here are totally misplaced, obviously. So
Yeah.
he's out of the band. And he's no interest in music. I'm trying to get him to learn piano with me, or I've got guitars for him to play. No interest. But here recently, he's been sending me Led Zeppelin. And which, like I warn him. Of course, I immediately tell him, they lived in a house called something or other on Loch Ness, and they are literal Satanists.
Boleskine House.
Boston,
Yeah.
yeah. So I tell him, because he hears me, and he hears me talking to my wife mostly because she's the only one who'll sit for it. But he hears it, and he
Yeah.
knows my views, and I do make an effort to share them with him when he'll have them. But 2 days ago, he's texted me this song by the Deftones, right? And that's my era. That's 90s. You'll remember the Deftones.
Yeah, I couldn't hum any of their tunes, but yeah, I
You
know.
talk about just feeling like you have a bucket of despair poured on top of you, and you just
Yeah.
need to be wrung out afterwards. Like it's literally the most oppressive sound that I can imagine for him to want to hear. But I relate to it. The difference is where I was and my circumstances were quite different from his. We try to create a loving environment, and he's got both his parents at home, and this is a sort of uh, place of joy, I guess, apart from the occasional outburst. And what drew me to that music at that time in my life were totally different circumstances. So I kind of excused myself. But now here he is, a 15-year-old, and he's drawn to the same stuff. So it's causing me to contemplate the lure of it, on an otherwise healthy child. And
We should continue this conversation. I've got to go now.
yeah,
I can tell you are the kind of guy that I can just instantly strike up a conversation. We can just carry on where we left. So I'll do that, and you can release this as a separate thing, or you can or join it. You can splice it together. We'll be
yeah.
wearing different clothes.
I'll just save this and we'll see what comes down the road.
But what I wanted to say was, yeah, I think we should talk about Leonard Cohen, for example. Um,
Okay.
I think that music is magic spells. That I think and you know that when they bring these albums out, they put hexes on them.
All right. Please, can we have a full discussion on this?
Well, we should.
Yes. Okay.
We should. We just
Yeah.
carry on. It'd be great.
I believe that fully. Yeah. And that's the
Yeah,
way
yeah,
it's impacted me. And again, with Radiohead, and there's just little niche nuance experiences that I've had and that you've had that we could discuss. So I heard this, and this is the impact it had on me. And it'd be pretty
sure.
interesting, I think.
I think it'd be great. I love talking to you, Tanner. So let's continue. To be continued.
Yeah, at your discretion, like I said, I'm always
Okay.
about this busy. So just
Cool.
just
Okay.
let me know.
Okay.
I'll be ready. And so I'm in
Great.
Houston, Texas, by the way, on the outskirts.
You're in where?
Houston, Texas, the metro.
Houston, like basically a swamp.
Oh, it's
It's horrible.
horrible. Yeah, yeah, it's horrible.
Horrible with mosquitoes and things.
Mosquitoes and alligators here in the neighborhood ponds and canals.
It's like,
And apparently there's
yeah.
a serial killer running rampant downtown. Yeah, like 200 bodies found in the.
I've been to Houston. You know why? Because in my normie phase, I went to NASA to look at all the yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, to look at all the spacecraft that like the astronauts went up in. Yeah.
We had some family come in a couple years ago, and I was forced to attend that and, walk around as if I didn't see through it all. But yeah, it's hilarious.
Yeah. We continue. Great.
Okay,
Okay.
James. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you,
Cheers.
Tanner. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, hey, one thing.
Yeah.
How's the finger?
Oh, it's still stiff. Can you see?
Yeah.
It's still stiff, but at least it seems to be not as. I mean, it won't bend properly,
Okay.
but I think it'll get better.
Some progress from the
Okay.
prayers, would you say?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure that helped.
Okay.
Of course, it helped.
Interesting. We'll talk about that too.
Okay.
Also,
Cool.
I did not read the article titled What Not to Say When Someone's Lost Their Father, but I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry
Oh,
your dad passed. I'm
oh
sorry.
no, wait, thank you. That's really kind. He was a great dad, and I miss him. But I mean, I, I think we've all got to go through it.
Yeah.
Um, oh, it's all good. But thank you.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you about it next time. Anyway, take care.
You too. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Please stay tuned. Part 2 of our interview with James Delingpole is coming up. in 10, 9, 8.
Okay,
That's got to
finally.
be it.
Do you know, I've had that problem as well with Zoom. I'm just
The format's different. I don't know if someone's been messing with my kids use this sometimes for Roblox, that game where the pedophiles get you.
that doesn't really narrow it down, does it?
No, no, really. Yeah. Uh, so today I have on my Geronimo t-shirt and I figured you would ask me about it, so I'll just tell you.
Yeah, tell
Can you
me.
guess, or I'll ask you rather, can you guess what would be my motivation in wearing this t-shirt?
I d- I imagine Geronimo was some kind of hero, wasn't he?
Yes, I think he was, at least that's how he lives in my mind. As a, they call him a First Nations Native American sort of resistance fighter.
You see, I grew up, maybe you did as well. I grew up in a world where we were encouraged to think that the Indians were the baddies and the cowboys were the goodies. And the Indians raped the women and scalped the men and did all sorts of terrible atrocities. And all these all these people wanted to do was to cross the plains in their wagons and just live a life like Little House on the Prairie. And these Indians wanted to stop them. And so all this propaganda. I mean, in the same way, I used to think that the Viet Cong were the baddies when I watched Nam movies. It never occurred to me that the war had been started deliberately by the American deep state, and that it's kind of bad when you take a nation. I think 1 million Vietnamese were killed in those war in that war. Okay, 52,000 Americans died, and
That's the
that's
statistic that we grow up hearing. But yeah, you don't ever hear how many Vietnamese. Yeah.
no, no. And I'm not saying that any of those kids that had it coming to them, the American kids who were drafted out there to die in these jungles for no reason. Obviously, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that we were we were fed a completely distorted view of history in the West, and it was all lies. And it turns out, hey, it was a good thing that General Custer got massacred at the last stand because the the Seventh Cavalry were the baddies. They were just they were the stormtroopers, weren't they? Of the Death Star. They were the bad guys.
Yeah.
And then the awful when later on. Oh, I think almost I mean, apart from giving the Indians or Native Americans, as we now call them, giving them blankets with smallpox on them so that they'd all die of disease. I mean, that was terrible, clearly. But the idea that the reason that the bison on the Great Plains were massacred in order to starve the Indians of food. So it's so wrong in so many different ways. The idea that you could sort of pretty much wipe out a species in order to destroy another human human group of people. Uh, that mindset could only be satanically inspired, I
I
think.
I agree. I think as that was what they call that westward expansion. It was ordained by God. They had a name for it that implied such sort of their marching orders to expand west across the continent. They taught it in public schools here. It's like basically divine right or something. That's not the words I'm searching for, but that kind of covers it. And there was a whole chapter in my history book with that title, and it kind of marries the religious mentality of the settlers with this sort of backward looking observation that, well, they succeeded, so it must have been ordained, I guess. And that's how I learned it. Yeah, like you're saying.
Well, I think that.
Manifest Destiny. That's what they called
Manifest Destiny.
it. Yeah.
It goes without saying that almost everything that Americans are taught in schools about their history is a lie. Starting, I guess, with the discovery of America. I mean, I think the story is it was named after what, Amerigo Vespucci or something.
That's what I learned.
And
Yeah.
then there was this guy Christopher Columbus who probably never existed. He was probably a sort of a composite character, a bit like William Shakespeare was a composite character. Um, and it's obvious, knowing what I know now, that America, the Phoenicians were crossing the Atlantic and trading with America and doing all sorts of things with America long before, before Leif Erikson even discovered America also, and before that, and one of the things that the Smithsonian Institute does, the Smithsonian is clearly controlled by the enemy. It spent the last 150 years going around American archaeological sites, deliberately destroying evidence of this earlier history that they want covered up. So they've destroyed all the bodies of the giants that lived in
Yeah.
America and ate the Indians. That's a weird thing that the giants used to lay traps for the Indians on their trails and used to eat them. And then the Indians sort of gathered together. Sorry, excuse my old-fashioned terminology
No,
for
no,
Indians.
that
But then the Indians struck back and basically tracked them down and trapped them in a cave and sort of burnt them and sort of wiped out the giants pretty much. But the
wow.
Smithsonian doesn't want you to know any evidence about the giants that were all over America. They don't
Have you
want you
delved into that pretty deeply? Because I'm aware of that, Chaco Canyon, and how they were forced to sacrifice children and worship this deity that, this giant essentially. These communities that rose up around these central gigantic figures, and they were forced into basically servitude and these traditions of sacrifice, kind of all across Mesoamerica and all the way up into Chaco Canyon. Have you looked at that?
No, I haven't looked at Checker Canyon.
For another
Uh,
time, but yeah, right on point to what you're saying there.
it's it's hard because of course this history has been concealed
Yeah.
deliberately and they've destroyed the evidence. It's very hard to work out, well, who the goodies and the baddies were, for example. I mean, if we believe the Bible, which I generally do, um, we would have to understand the giants as the descendants of the Nephilim. Because I mean, in Genesis, they talk about sometimes the word giant is used as the translation for this word Nephilim, which means fallen ones, I think. Um, and in that time there were giants, and also after it talks about the flood. They were there before the flood, but even though the one of the purposes of the flood apparently was to rid the world of these bastard progeny of the fallen angels, it didn't succeed because you've got that period after the flood where the children of Israel are going into uh, the land of Canaan and discovering that there's still loads of giants around, including Goliath of Gath. But they're everywhere, aren't they? These giants. And
Yeah.
if you look at pictures from the 19th century, you'll see there are still giants around then, giants in the Tsar's elite guard and stuff, and the Tsar of Russia, and elsewhere. That there are the descendants of the giants were around, and there
And
was the
there,
giant they found in the cave, wasn't there, in Afghanistan, the special forces.
I never click on that one, but yeah, it pops up occasionally on my YouTube feed. Red-haired giant in cave, and it's a soldier telling a story. Have
Yeah.
you looked at that?
Well, you see, this is one of the file under. I hope it's true because it's quite cool, but how do I know? I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, it seems to be the case that there are quite a few special forces people who were on that patrol who've reported on it and talked about it. Um, in the same way, there's that other story about um, the 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 perfectly preserved body of Gilgamesh. You know about this, don't you?
The Epic of Gilgamesh.
Yeah, so Gilgamesh, the story goes that the real reason that the US went in to Iraq, certainly for the second Iraq war, was basically so that they could send in their archaeological teams, Indiana Jones style,
Yes.
and collect these artifacts and more, which the people like Hillary Clinton and co could use for their magic rituals. Because of course the elites, as they probably think of themselves, so I think of them as just like evil predators. They're probably very proud of their fallen angel heritage. I suspect that this is the true reason why the upper classes are so obsessed with the idea of blue blood and lineage and heritage. It's because they want to be able to trace their bloodlines back to the fallen angels. So um, it would make sense that they would try and find the body of Gilgamesh, who was a giant, who was certainly descended from the fallen, would have been descended from the fallen angels.
Yeah.
But whether it's fake or not, I don't know. I mean, there's not even any point saying it looks real because what does that mean anymore?
Yeah. Yeah. Anything can be made to look real.
Of course it
Yeah.
could.
Yeah, but so you kind of look at history before the internet or early internet and these theories that were around. And if there's photographic evidence from the early 1900s of these giants in the company of the Tsar, or, that's pretty compelling and interesting. I'd like to see some of that stuff.
Well, it is. There are somebody wrote a book about this, um, where he went through all these local newspapers from the 19th century in the US, and it was full of stories about, "Oh, and we've discovered this skeleton which is 6'9" or 8'2" or whatever. And so it was quite widespread. They really were digging up the bodies of giants. And where are they now? And where are these newspaper archives? They've probably been destroyed now, or I don't know, or they're in the hands of people who wouldn't give you access to them.
Do you find it interesting? And we'll segue back here in a second on the topic of giants and Geronimo and the elites and eventually to our music stuff. But you find it interesting that people like Tucker Carlson, most notably Tucker, I guess, because he probably has the largest audience, but also maybe Candace Owen, they're beginning to speak about the demonic. Have you noticed that?
Um,
In fact, Tucker has an encounter story. He talks about waking up with scratches in the night.
that's right. I did
Yeah.
see that one.
Yeah, and he's also hinting. He drops little word clues in his monologues that address this kind of stuff, the repressed histories, and I guarantee if you were to sit down with him and delve into this topic, he'd jump on board with you.
Well, I'd love to do Tucker, but I think he's probably scared of me. He probably thinks I'm too. I
You,
don't
do
know.
you- well, he has an interesting background, right? His father was Mockingbird CIA for sure,
For
and
sure.
he toured
And
with the Grateful Dead. He was part of that whole hippie thing. Well, he's not that old, but the Grateful Dead certainly were, and it's no small thing. And is it a disclosure that at the beginning of his show, it's a picture of him standing next to Jerry Garcia? He's just kind of showing you like, I'm kind of connected. But then somebody could say that about you, I guess, because there'll be pictures of you and Robert Plant. But
they could say it about me. I haven't got quite Tucker's. I mean, Tucker is he's upper class American elite, isn't he? I mean,
yeah,
he's absolutely he's pretty much bloodlines. I don't know whether he can trace his lineage back to the Daughters of the Revolution,
I think I've heard him talk about that. Yeah. Revolutionary hero ancestors. Yeah.
and you see the problem is that the people who rose to the forefront of America right from the off were were the bad guys. I mean,
That
they
brings us
were,
to my shirt. So you're familiar with the skull and bones?
yeah, yeah.
So Entombed,
322.
yeah, they have a tradition. And until recently, they had the bones of Geronimo
That's right.
on the campus of Yale University, right? Is it Yale?
Yeah, it's Yale.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as part of their, I don't know if it was initiatory or if it's just a regular thing they do, but they would stand outside of the tomb of Geronimo's bones and yell Geronimo, I guess. I don't know what the occultic significance of that is, other than maybe to mock the fact that, you know, they won. I don't know.
Um, yeah. Skull and Bones is just extremely dodgy, isn't it?
It's got
It's
to
a
be. Yeah.
continuation of Sabbatean Frankism imported from the continent, or from the what we call the continent, you'd call the European mainland, I guess. Um, yeah, it was Skull and Bones was founded by people who had been to upper class um, drinking clubs in in German universities, and they'd brought back the rituals and traditions, which I think were themselves occultic and Freemasonic.
Yeah.
So Skull and Bones became the kind of the power base of it became the of all the secret societies that run the world. Skull and Bones seems to punch above its weight.
And there was this sort of it's a sexualized ritual aspect and
There's a lot of that.
a perverted sexualized ritual thing. And so the people who came up through that then went on to create these offshoots like the Bohemian Grove.
Yeah.
And again, you have rumors or you have Nixon talking about the kind of things that go on there sexually. And yeah, it's interesting. That that aspect of the occult, the sort of sex magic thing, is a good entry point into rock and roll, I think.
I mean, blood, sugar, sex, magic.
Yeah. But before we get too far away from the American warmongering and our responsibility for creating all that and and the narratives we create, have you read the book Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon?
Yeah.
Okay, so it talks in some detail about the Gulf of Tonkin incident.
With Jim Morrison's
Jim
father
Morrison's father,
being the
yeah,
commander of the US fleet in the Gulf of Tonkin incident.
which provided the impetus for the public to come on board and say, let's go get him." That, of course, after that was after JFK had his brains blown out on TV. Yeah,
Mm.
and then and then the cheerleaders kind of arose. Is that would you consider that a good moment in history for sort of the birth of
I,
the modern rock and roll movement?
yeah, I think it's um I mean obviously they've been trying it before then. They'd So you think about Buddy Holly, for example. Um and the Beatles was before that. The Beatles was before the well, I suppose that when was the Beatles in the Beatles
64.
64. Okay. So we know from Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon really talks about the Laurel Canyons scene, which was a late 60s phenomenon. So what this is what that was when the Beatles had gone to India to promote the Maharishi and to promote all the drag us into the new age and make us take all more psychotropic drugs and stuff. Um, the the Laurel Canyon scene, which I mean, I used to love that music. I used to love the Birds, 8 Miles High, and the Mamas and the Papas, California Dreaming, all these songs that you really like, and they sound so innocent and dreamy and just the harmonies. There was big emphasis on harmonies, wasn't there? You think about Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, those weird but amazing harmonies on Country Girl and stuff like that. Um, and then you learn, then you learn from this book by what was he called? Dave Goldman? Dave
McGowan.
McGowan, sorry, Dave McGowan. Um, you learn that Stephen Stills, I think, before he joined Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, was on these missions into Central America. You know, as you do when you're a sort of proto hippie rock star, not. So the guy, when have you ever watched a documentary about the Vietnam War, which has not included footage of kids being shot at Kent State University by the National Guard while Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young sing, oh, sorry, Buffalo Springfield rather,
Yeah,
sing For What It's Worth in the
right.
background. It is the anthem of the anti-war movement from the North, and it is sung partly by a guy who was on special operations in Central America for the CIA only only maybe a year or two before. So all these, so McGowan tells you that he looks at the origins of all these bands that we love, the Doors. Like, I don't think the Doors were as good as they were always a triumph of image over actual content. I thought the Doors were never as good as they were sold to us as being. But
Definitely. Yeah.
but the Doors, but I think I had a lot of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young stuff, and I loved. I thought the Byrds were great, and these bands were pretty much all the products of families from Virginia, and they were either CIA or military. So they weren't even born anywhere near California. And
Right.
there was no musical tradition in the Laurel Canyon before. It was mainly a sort of movie area. So suddenly you get, or seemingly organically, you get Joni Mitchell and Neil Young and all these people and um, Mama Cass and Michelle Phillips and all they all gravitate to Laurel Canyon. Like it's so natural that this is happening and this movement of love and peace springs up. And you realize that this is all kind of the creation of the CIA or similar, three-letter agencies anyway, because a lot of these guys couldn't even play their instruments
Yeah.
because because that wasn't their job. They weren't natural pop stars. They were created pop stars, and most of the music, most of the playing on the great albums of that era was not done by the alleged stars. It was done by the Wrecking Crew, who were the session musicians who did all Elvis's backing music. So yeah, the whole scene was fake, and it was designed apparently with a view, I mean, apart from the usual ones of breaking up the family, turning the kids onto drugs, encouraging sort of,
Premarital, unbound
yeah,
sex. Yeah.
all that. But it was also to derail the anti-war movement by stopping it being about protesting against war and turning it into stuff like, yeah, taking loads of acid and having sex in the mud at Woodstock.
Yeah. So you probably didn't have a chance to look at it, but I sent you a little piece from Ridiculous Ubiquitous about the monkeys, an episode of the monkeys.
Oh,
Do you remember the monkeys?
of course I do. I mean, as a child, we used to get the monkeys
Yeah.
on TV, and I liked Davy Jones because he was English, and
Yeah,
and Mike Nesmith because he had the hat, and Mickey Dolenz,
Mickey
and
Dolenz, yeah.
there
So
was
they had
another.
an episode on the topic of what was the purpose of the hippie movement, you know? So Mickey Dolenz, he was a proponent of marijuana use early on. And there was an episode, I don't remember the name of it now, but essentially it's really interesting because the episode was about how the media can brainwash the public into adopting their agendas, and that the solution was to partake of this big green plant called the Frodis plant. So, so it was like basically, Uncle Sam's trying to coerce you into becoming a soldier or into coming on board with his, you know, military industrial complex agenda. But the way to fight that and the way to foster love and to unite is to smoke weed, essentially. It's a classic episode. So I thought that was an interesting encapsulation of that time because and what the role of the hippie movement was because there was a genuine resistance to the movement on college campuses like UC Berkeley and different places. You had intellectual students. You take any college student who's semi-free thinking and still has that rebellious streak, and they're going to find it, they're going to dig into it, and they'll have some objections. And so, was the hippie movement pretty much just to subvert that, to kind of redirect that? So, in other words, if the hippie movement had been allowed, or if the resistance to the war had been allowed, and the outcry to the assassination of JFK and his brother, if that resistance had been allowed to have been led by intellectual and well-meaning, truth-seeking, kids,
Mm.
that wouldn't have fared as well as if it had been rebranded as what you're talking about. Just this sort of base um, seeking out of getting stoned and having sex all
Well,
the time.
we know, don't we, from the study of history, that they always like to own both sides of the revolution.
Yeah.
So they'll always infiltrate. So as well as being representatives of whatever it is that's being overthrown, they always have kids in the revolutionary camp, and they take control of the revolution and use it for their own ends. That's always been the way. So I suppose just out of habit, apart from anything else, they were never going to leave the peace movement to develop on its own and do whatever it had to do. They had to infiltrate it and subvert it because it's what they do.
Yeah. And that was the primary function of the music.
Of yeah, and hippie don't. I mean, so they control they use all these figures of the time that we think of as countercultural heroes because that's one of the things we get taught, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's one of the reasons I started taking acid and stuff because hey man, there were all these really cool people that yeah, I mean they were fighting the man and it was cool and I mean like Hunter S. Thompson, you want to be a really good writer, James. You want to be a Gonzo journalist. You want to be like Hunter S. Thompson. You don't want to be like some one of those squares. So you've got to take loads of drugs. All these people that are sold to us. Owsley, the guy who synthesized the best form of LSD, Timothy Leary. I
Mhm.
mean, these guys were almost certainly CIA assets.
Right.
In the same way, the Grateful Dead. The Grateful Dead's primary purpose was not to make music. I mean, not that they didn't make any music. It was just kind of shit, wasn't it? Sort of oral sludge. Um, um,
It took a while for the hypnosis to take effect, but I did eventually come around to it for a little while.
did
Yeah.
you? Yeah, it does.
It's just kind of,
Interesting
it's,
thing is, Tanner, what I realized is that oh, we've got to remember to talk about Leonard Cohen as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So I remember there was a stage where I was always into new genres of music, particularly dance music, new permutations. Because remember, we got dance music way before you Americans cottoned onto it. It was weird. The we had a so-called second summer of love in 1988, I think it was, and you weren't really onto the kind of the pills and stuff.
So that's what we call techno electronic.
Yeah, well, you had sort of you had your Detroit techno allegedly, but you never really got it in the same way as we did, I don't think. You had house, but I think we had a much more um, developed dance music scene. I remember going over to America in that time and realizing that the American kids knew relatively little about what was going on musically, and there was this massive thing happening, and it was dance music, and it was the future,
Is
and
that where
music,
the rave came from?
yeah,
Okay.
all that rap stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but we used to get these sort of permutations and subgenres and things, and one of those subgenres was drum and bass. And I mean, you're familiar with drum and bass now, but it was very niche at the time, because it's got these sort of slightly it's not the 120 beats per minute regular of regular dance music. It's more um uh it's more complicated. And I read about these clubs that were opening up in areas of London that were not known for being uh, at the epicenter of cool, and suddenly were very cool, like Hoxton. There was a scene in Hoxton and stuff. And I remember sort of kind of forcing myself to like this music through repetition, just listening to it a lot. And I kind of came to the tentative conclusion that a lot of the music that we think of as classic music, it's just that we've trained ourselves to think it's great. That we've been told by the tastemakers that this is, hey kids, this is the music you've got to be listening to now. This is where it's at, kids. And if you don't get it, you're you're really not, you don't count. You're not part of the scene. So you're told that grunge is the new thing, and suddenly you're listening to Black Hole Sun and Smells Like Teen Spirit, and you're going to grunge clubs and you're wearing plaid because obviously plaid looks really great, and you know all the names of the Seattle is the greatest city in the world, or in the Laurel Canyon era, you're just smoking loads of weed and listening to. There's always a drug that goes with the particular genre because that's part of the way that they sell it to you. Because don't forget, who controls the drug trade? Well, it's the same three-letter agencies which are pushing the the sort of the Tavistock Institute brainwashing youth culture agenda. There's a drug that goes with the music. So the dance music had ecstasy or MDMA, Mandy, whatever you want to call it. Um, uh, Drum and bass was I think probably quite cokey. I mean, as was a lot of the 80s music sound, wasn't it? That whole kind of um what was that club in New York that was big in the 80s? There was the
Oh, yeah, the numbers. I think it's got 50 Club 57
um
or something.
yeah,
Or
whatever
Studio
it was.
57 maybe.
Yeah,
So
57.
the new wave stuff, is that what that kind of new wave?
That was quite cokey as well. I know was disco was probably
Oh yeah, I think that was very
quite
cocaine driven.
cokey, but that's probably because they hadn't really cottoned on to the even though I think MGMA was synthesized in about 1913 by Merck. They'd forgotten about it and it needed to be revived. But every music scene has its drug to go with it as part of it. Anyway, what I'm saying is that regardless of the merits of the intrinsic merits of any popular music, what really sells it is repetition. And
Yeah.
that is why the media and the producers are actually more important than the artists themselves, because it's the media and the industry which decides how much promo you get. So you can
Yeah.
be the most brilliant band in the world, but you're not going to do squat unless you've got the industry behind you. And the industry will only promote you if you are pushing the message I mean, even Radiohead, I'm afraid.
Oh,
Radiohead,
definitely. Yeah.
they're controlled.
Oh, yeah. And their music always struck me as um, very instructional, maybe on a spiritual level, but I was in a really dark place when I got into, so I had Pablo Honey at the same time everyone did. And then when OK Computer came out, I was really struggling. I was, I don't know, 17, 18. I was living alone in a basement of my um, friend's grandparents. And, just something about the spirit of that album. I found it really disassociating. It was hypnotic.
Yeah, not good for your mental health, I'd have thought.
No, definitely
Not what
not.
you needed.
Not at all what I needed. It was planted. It was like it felt like a drug dealer had given me some illicit drug, or there was that same feeling as I partook of that music. It was like, yeah, this is hitting the spot and I can't stop listening to it. And
It is extraordinary, isn't it? Looking at the stuff from our perspective. There's the sort of the cliche of the parents saying to their kids, "Turn that bloody racket down." Um, and actually, the parents are right because it's pop music is like a kind of, well, it's a form of magic spell. It's you. There's a lot of occult ritual in the actual live performances and in the videos, which reinforce the occult um, spell message. Um, but it's like having an enemy agent in your own household, isn't it?
it is, yeah.
You've invited into your child's bedroom this enemy agent who's there to destroy your family, your kid's prospects by messing up his brain. And it is for mostly, well, I mean, girls get messed up in a different way by different kinds of music, like Taylor Swift and stuff. But this is targeted. There's a certain kind of music which is targeted at white, middle class, often educated youth. And it's designed to, I don't know, why would you want to sabotage the most productive members of society, the ones who ought to be the engine room of the economy,
Yeah.
um, the ones that create Western culture's values? I mean, it's going to be the educated young white men, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you,
So,
you you know that you have to go all the way to the top to make sense of it. Man's
good.
enemy, the enemy of man, right? There, everything makes sense. Lucifer as the puppet master, he's kind of you can trace all the threads back up to his unifying hand. And there it makes sense. But yeah, it is easy to wonder how these agendas are connected outside
Well,
of the agencies. Like, how can this agency, you've got one government, multiple agencies, different agendas, seemingly working apart, and they don't really come together for a clear goal unless you come to terms with the fact that they actually are not working on behalf of humanity, but on behalf of our enemy.
yeah. Well, you should have said spoiler alert before you mentioned the guy pulling the strings, because because that's it.
Yeah.
I always say, look, people who don't get that ultimately this is a spiritual war we're fighting between good and evil
Yeah.
really only have part of the picture. They're always going to be missing the 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 final piece of the jigsaw puzzle. The
Yeah.
devil,
Well,
the
listen, I
devil.
wanted to jump there because I want to come back to our youth in his bedroom. I think the music is basically it serves at least two functions: to muddle, and also it's a summoning ritual. It's an invocation. I've been in the presence of these things. I discern them, and
In, well, tell me, in what way?
the feeling of spiritual oppression
Yeah,
that people talk about as a state of mind, I think I experience it as something in addition to a state of mind. Um, it's a weird topic to discuss, discernment,
yeah,
but when you add oppression to that, like discernment is something you kind of willingly participate in sometimes, and sometimes not maybe, but oppression is something that is happening to you against your will. And if the only thing that is needed to trigger it is a song, um,
yeah.
I
Well,
think it's
that
good
isn't that
evidence.
how it works with
Yeah,
MK Ultra and stuff? They
that's it.
just,
Yeah. Yeah, that triggers the psychological flip over. But so I've been in a, I don't want to share too much about my um drug use. My children are still young, so I don't, you know how it is. The passive endorsement, like, well, he's still alive, but I've been in situations in that time in the 90s listening to those albums and on those accompanying chemicals and in the
mm,
company of other people and witnessed physical manifestations of the demonic, what I now know to be that. Um, and with no more, what not like we were just bumbling around. The music playing loud upstairs. We had a house that we all gathered at and partied. And a friend and I walked downstairs and there was this little boiler room where the girl who owned the house, her parents owned the house and it was sort of her house, but it was also our party house. And in this room with no windows where she kept her tanning bed, we just were, as you do, you're on this trip and you walk down and we see these shadow figures. I see them and I say, "Hey, do you see that?" Yes. And then we stand there listening and we hear them like talking back and forth. And the feeling, it's a feeling that I had been familiar with because I'd had a similar experience alone, not on drugs as a much younger kid. And we kind of never spoke about it again. And then I went back to that town about 3 years ago to a homecoming football game and kind of had a reunited with a lot of those guys. And we were sitting around by the campfire, and I asked him, "Do you remember that night? Did you see what I saw?" And he was like, "Yeah." And now he's not comfortable going there. But he affirmed it. He was like, "Yeah."
yeah,
So yeah, that's what I'm saying. I have no doubt that this entity, the demon, is a real thing. And so you know, I, that's why I jumped to the puppet master, right? And I come down, his minions. That's another, if that's real, then that is also affirming of this theory that there's, Lucifer, um, as the chairman of their club, I guess.
yeah. I I sometimes think of that phrase, Lord of the Flies,
Yeah.
and I think that he doesn't just control literal flies, but the demons are all kind of manifestations of Satan. I mean, they're not of God. They are um they work they work with Satan and help him to achieve his ends. But I was thinking about drugs. I used to think drugs are cool and sexy and fun and stuff. And I realize now that one of the reasons they want you to take drugs, apart from imprinting that particular music and style in your head, which I think that drugs are a shortcut. For example, nobody ever got into dance music without taking ecstasy, or they did, but it's definitely a shortcut. Um, the reason that they want you to take mind altering chemicals is because I think it it thins the veil which separates us from the demonic world. The demons find it much, much easier to penetrate our world and feed on us if we're under the influence of drugs. I mean, I used to, with my brother Dick, we went through this phase where we did acid every now and again, and we went to this party and dropped this acid, and it was quite strong. And I remember wandering off into the night on my own in the dark and lying there and trying to make all these visions go away. And I remember particularly there was a moment where there's this man, like a shadowy figure, with a tall black hat. Um, and he was I was sort of smoking cigarettes to try to make myself to straighten myself out. You'll do anything when I was putting water on my face. I wanted to turn my brain off, and I couldn't do it. And I remember watching the glowing butt of my cigarette, and there was the man with his hat on the end of my cigarette, and I flicked it off, but he wouldn't go away. I called him Mr. Migarette. I suppose because it rhymes with cigarette, but it so messed me up that for certainly 6 months afterwards, I was in a very, very bleak, bleak place. I told people it was as if I felt like my soul had been stolen. Um, and yeah, um, it's not sort of thing you want to happen to one's own kids, is it?
No.
This is what they're doing to us. They're messing with us.
Yeah, and that the pain of the sort of soullessness that follows, and that marks that whole period of my life, actually. If if you'd like, I have another really traumatic story
Mm.
along those lines. Maybe we can come back to it later, or would now be good. Let's do it later because it'll totally derail us.
Oh,
But
will it? Okay.
yeah, but yeah, I know what you mean. That feeling of having been robbed of something. I can remember the way that I prayed during that time, and because I grew up a pastor's son and multi-generational preachers on both sides of the family. So
Right.
I had a lot of exposure to scripture and I lived with the belief of these things already. God and the demonic sort of had never been made real to me until the age of 14, I guess. The demonic side. But I had the framework for prayer and all of that. And when I look at my life during that period of time where I'm consuming all that music and experimenting and eventually spending way too much of my time under the influence of different things, some of which we've discussed, it was a hollowness and a desperation and a feeling of just like something had been taken from me and I wanted it to be restored, you know? And I don't think that was ever right at all at once. It's basically been a slow progression
Yeah.
um, in the decades since then. But it did a lot of damage, and I was pondering a lot of bad things for myself and my future for a long time as a result of the mentality that accompanied that music and those drugs and those entities, I think. Yeah.
I think that um, I think we were lucky to have emerged from all that as kind of fairly well balanced people because I think some people don't come back. No, I do think of all this stuff as quintessentially satanic because what does Satan do? He doesn't appear to you in the form of a goat with horns and red glowing eyes and fangs or whatever. Because if you did that, you'd just be going, oh, that's horrible. No, he comes at you in the form of like, yeah, he's a cool guy. He dresses really snappily, and he gives you all these really nice things that, like drugs that give you take you to another place. And what does it all involve, that this world that they're trying to sell you? Like sex with really really beautiful chicks, like way out of your league, and but it could happen to you. And music, and and just generally being cool. You know how much it matters when you're a young man, when you're a teenager. What is the thing that you desire more than anything? You want to be cool, right?
Yeah. I actively preach against coolness in my house. Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but and the clever thing is, you're never even quite sure what cool actually is. But so you're chasing after this indefinable thing, which is almost unattainable, and you'll put yourself through any number. You're you are all those situations where you're hanging around waiting for the drug dealers to arrive. All those occasions where you end up buying bad stuff that doesn't work. All the times when you have really embarrassing, painful experiences, which sometimes put you in the way of danger, and you think the devil is laughing his socks off at this stuff. These kids who could be so much better. I mean, you imagine how much better it would have been if we joined a choir, and we're singing the music of J.S. Bach, and we acquired a skill, or we just perfected something that's like we became experts at joinery, and the beauty of creating things out of and instead, what are we doing? We're trying to get laid and trying to score drugs and listening to music which makes us depressed and rudderless and leads us away from any kind of sense of where we're going in life. We have because the music and the drugs and the lost weekend become ends in themselves.
That's right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, if you were the ruler of the darkness of this world, isn't that what you'd give the kids? Exactly all that.
Yeah.
And what are
Yeah.
the
And
alternatives?
and the way they define cool is sort of as rebellion. It's actually not. But that's he's controlling both
No,
ends.
that's
So
right. It's
it's like
performative.
it's the least autonomous option to try to strive after a predefined thing called cool. You know? It's not at all what it pretends to be. It's conformity. But like even the punk movement.
Meanwhile, they, at the same time, the devil has sold to us the alternative as like buttoned up, sexless Christians with their stupid superstition, which has been replaced by science and knowledge. We've all grown out of this medieval stuff. It's so lame and embarrassing. And of course, the church is doing the devil's work for him by really helping him by
Yeah,
saying, "Hey kids, we're going to try and be like rock and roll ourselves. We're going to have these Christian raves in our church, or we're gonna ditch the old liturgy and replace it with this kind of and these songs about, yeah, sing for Jesus, sing for They're doing the devil's work.
yeah,
They're making
yeah,
Christianity so cool and so uncool and so unchristian that yeah, sorry, I'm going back to the devil. He's got way better tunes.
exactly. Yeah, it's a poor substitute. Yeah,
Yeah.
the church makes a poor substitute for the world, which is obviously not it was never intended to do that. Well, yeah,
No.
it's an alternative, a completely different polar opposite radical lifestyle. It's supposed to be, you know, impossible. Jesus said, basically it's impossible to do what I told you to do, but with God, you can do it.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the litmus test. Am I doing the impossible right now? Like almost never. It's not just going to church. It's not just what, it's doing the Sermon on the Mount, right? So fearing not what I will eat or wear tomorrow, asking for today's bread only, you know, living basically as a baby bird, God's hand to my mouth. That frees me to love my neighbor, which I'm struggling with right now.
Yeah, that's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all hard. It's really hard. So this is, of course, is the appeal when when Christianity is honest about that it's the hard path, that's when it starts attracting young men
Yeah.
because they're going, yeah, yeah, this is like becoming a Marine, or this
Yeah.
is this is hardcore. I'm
Yeah.
up.
But if you walk into a megachurch life group, as we call them, and you say, you start to ask these questions, and there's already an established culture of prosperity, and everyone's kind of there as a for social and reasons. You got the insurance guys, and they've got the barristers, as you call them, right? Or whatever.
Yeah,
It's more of a country club environment. And so I had that experience kind of having read the Bible and having survived this traumatic physical experience. I was sick for about 2 years and it was awful. And then just sort of alone at my desk reading my Bible and my Psalms every day for 2 years. I got radicalized. And so I was like, well, let's go to church. And you find yourself sitting there saying, okay, so how do we love our enemy and not compete for resources? And like, how do I proceed, in this culture that wants to define me by how I earn my living, but also not worry about that stuff?
it's
And you just get crickets chirping and sort of it becomes very uncomfortable. So either you have to calm down or, just stop going, which is ultimately I'm unchurched right now. But um yeah.
yeah, yeah. I'm kind of lucky because um lucky in various ways. One is that God has blessed me with a personality where I have absolutely no filter. So I really, really don't care what what other people think or whether. So I come out with all the stuff when I'm in church. Sometimes I kind of I think I shock the I shock some of my fellow Christians with how old school I am in my views. But actually, not as often as you think, because I'm in the Church of England. I live in the country. We've got now 7 churches in my parish, all within pretty much walking distance of where I live. Each of those churches was probably built between about 1200 and say probably the oldest might the most modern might be 1350.
Wow.
So so we're talking these really old, lovely churches, um, populated with a congregation. Maybe the average Sunday service um, will be about 10 or 12 people, but maybe sometimes we have a combined service where there might be 30. But I suppose the people who go to those churches, they're gonna be quite dedicated. They're gonna kind of believe this stuff
Yeah.
because otherwise because there's no pressure to go. It's gonna be a matter of personal. You've made the effort. You believe this stuff. So I'm quite lucky. There's none of that modern stuff that you've just described. Everything is quite kind of old fashioned.
It sounds idyllic. Yeah, I envy you really a lot.
When I take communion, um, the chalice, the communion cup is 16th century silver, and you think about all the people who've taken communion out of that cup.
Wow. Yeah,
It's
that is bizarre.
yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah,
So it's Church of England, and that is still the sanctioned church of England?
yeah. It is. I mean, it's Anglicanism. It's our national religion, and everyone is by default, as far as the church is concerned, an Anglican. You can sort of opt out or declare yourself a non-believer or whatever. But yeah, if you are in a wherever whatever parish you live in, you are de facto a member of the Church of England. And the thing about doctrinally, it's quite lax. So you get, or rather, quite. generous in its uh, breadth of sympathies. So you've got everything from the low church, um, the evangelical wing of the church,
That's the low
which is,
church.
yeah, which is
Okay.
all about, welcoming Jesus into your heart uh, well, yeah, things that evangelicals do,
Yeah.
all the way up to the high church, which is more Catholic than the Catholics, and very sort of smells and bells and tinkling, and incense, and often very camp, obviously gay priests with all the kind of the panoply and the and some of them, some churches have modern um modern services, and some churches, like my church, we stick to the Book of Common Prayer, which was mostly written by Thomas Cranmer in the mid 16th century. So we like that. In my church, we insist on the old language.
That's
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. You want it. It's so much more beautiful.
And there's no room for uncomfortable individualism. It's more about coming, acknowledging little fellowship. Maybe you get a nice reminder from the scriptures, and then you're off.
So I don't know how long, but I'd be interested to actually compare notes. So I would say, so the Anglican communion service, um, using the Book of Common Prayer, depending on who the priest is taking the service, the minister, or we'd call him, what would he be called? The rector or the vicar. Um, Depending on how good he is with how up to speed he is and stuff, the service, including four hymns, you get maybe four hymns, and you get communion, and you get a sermon. The sermon will last about 10 minutes.
Perfect.
Um, that service will last between 45 minutes and an hour. And it rarely extends beyond the hour.
That
Um,
sounds really
and,
ideal.
and you
Yeah.
get prayers and a long build up in the Book of Common Prayer service. You get a long build up to the communion. Um, and once you've sort of admitted your unworthiness to receive communion and stressed the importance of God's forgiveness and everything else, you finally process to the altar. You kneel before the altar, and the priest or his server will give you the communion. And there's a horrible new thing that some people do where they dip their communion wafer into the wine and drink it like a soggy biscuit.
Then you get the floaties in there for the next
Well,
guy.
it doesn't last going that long enough. But for me, it seems like an abomination. You're not drinking Christ's blood or eating his body, are you? I mean, you're not if you're having a soggy biscuit.
Yeah, that does seem wrong. That I guess that's to avoid having to,
Well,
share
some
the
people
Bible.
do, but I kind of think, is God going to give you a disease when you're taking communion? I don't think he's going to have that.
Right. Well, I like that approach. Yeah, I like to leave things in God's hands too. Yeah.
But I mean, the thing is, I think you like me. I actually believe this crazy shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it because I want to be kind of pious. I'm pious because I believe it.
Yeah. Well, so I grew up in the evangelical church, and it's basically 3 hours, I would say. It's a 3 hour
Whoa.
experience. It's an all day. So you show up at, I don't know, 9 o'clock. You go have you have your coffee, you mingle, then you go to your Sunday school, then you come and sing. Then there's a kind of a wind down, and then the children go off again to their version of church, and then begins the motivational speaking. And that can last for a really long time. If
Oh,
there's a guest
wow.
speaker here, collecting money for whatever scam he's running, then that could add an extra half hour. So,
Is
but
the motivational speaking, what's it about? And is it ever any good?
yeah, well, you take a church like Joel Osteen's, I guess, and you could say he's good because he's got 20,000 members. Are you familiar with that name?
No.
Okay, so I think it's probably the largest church here in the southeast, but it's in Texas. It's so large that the city of Houston they built themselves a new basketball arena, and they donated the old one to this church so that they could have all their attendees. And so, yeah, he's an author and he writes books titled Every Day a Friday, and, kind of along the Oprah Winfrey lines of The Secret, but repackaged as Christianity. Yeah.
Oh, this is dangerous, isn't it? This is
Oh,
like
yeah.
the
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, most definitely. That's one push within the evangelical church here. And I'm not an expert here, but this has been my experience. I'm just telling you the kind of things I've observed. And then you have another one which is much more aware, I guess. Um, and so it's toned down. Thinking of Rick Warren. Do you know that name? So he's a very successful Southern Baptist minister from California.
Right.
And he's started this church in his home and it's grown to, 100,000 people in California or whatever. And he's got multiple satellites. And so other churches in the Southern Baptist umbrella will model themselves after that. So it's like they literally get handed down scripts. And it's they're sort of like, it's a repackaging of the gospel, how to not be weird and be Christian, how to be good at insurance sales and be a good Christian. It's that kind of thing. How to raise money to build your $11 million expansion, which mostly consists of a sound system and and lighting and smoke machines are,
Oh,
it's just
of course, it's a business. It's
it's a
like
business.
trying to expand,
Yeah, it's a business, definitely. It,
which you sort of you can understand that that's obviously how Christ's message spread in the first place when he sent out his disciples and they recruited however many recruits, and then it was like a kind of pyramid scheme, wasn't it? Or,
yeah. Yeah.
selling
Oh,
selling
except that
couple.
except that there's nothing. I mean, the people at the top generally were crucified upside down or beheaded or stoned or
Yeah, yeah,
burnt
yeah.
or eaten by a
It
lion.
wasn't. Yeah,
The motivations were slightly different.
motivations definitely. Um, yeah, what you've described sounds like not really horrifying in a way, because you've got all these people who think that they're Christians,
Yeah.
and I mean, I'm not saying they're not,
Well,
but
they think they're participating in something holy, and they have a misunderstanding of the gospel and of the radical nature of Jesus's teaching because they don't really digest it themselves. There's a guy you need to check out. You should talk to this guy. He's been making his rounds, but he has a internet presence, a pretty large one. He's been on Tucker and Sean Ryan, but he's done like an expose film on this. He travels around to these churches, comes in the door and asks to see their financials, and then he gets arrested time and again, basically. But he puts a lot of work into unearthing these interesting facts that help to put into perspective the actual goals of these institutions, which is to make money.
yeah,
And it just doesn't jive with Jesus.
it really doesn't. I mean, the time he got most angry, wasn't it, was when the temple was being used for the money
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah, that's right. He was railing against those guys pretty consistently. And I like I understand I can't be like Jesus. I should strive to be, but um I take some encouragement in John the Baptist's language to the Pharisees. Yeah. He was a lot in his language and in his insult hurling, you know? That's kind of the spirit that I want to carry when I'm confronted with this. It's like you den of vipers, or you guys are
Yeah.
snakes. Who told you, who warned you that you were going to hell, or whatever he said. But he was not very courteous and he wasn't very concerned about their well-being or their
Their
the
hurt
condition of their
feelings.
souls. Yeah, or their hurt feelings. essentially was like, "Oh, you guys are trying to get into heaven? Like you don't be here trying to listen to this good news. You guys are peddling the dirty stuff."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that seems unchristlike. So I mean, he Jesus called him the greatest of all men, right? And he wrestled with that kind of spirit in addressing those guys. So I don't know if that's a passive endorsement of my anger that I have for people who abuse and misrepresent the gospel, but
Do
I
you
have.
not find it's on my journey as a Christian, I find it very difficult to um to work out exactly what the deal is. I mean, so okay, I know that Jesus is kind of my role model. I read I read the Gospels on sort of rotations. So I every evening I read a chapter of the Old Testament, a chapter of the New Testament, and three Psalms. Um, and the Psalms I've completely absorbed. I've learned. I think I've learned about 30 of them now, 35. I'm working my way through the Psalter, and you know Jesus is constantly quoting the Psalms, so I know I'm on sound ground here. Um, every time I reread the Gospels, I pick up some new detail that I hadn't noticed before. In the Old Testament, well, uh, the Old Testament is the New Testament concealed, and the New Testament is the Old Testament revealed. So
Yeah.
it's very important. I'm not all those evangelical Christians, and there are many who think it's just about the New Testament. No, they're completely getting it wrong. But even so, although I'm Anglican, I look sometimes towards the Eastern Church, the Orthodox Church, and I think, yeah, you've got it pretty right there. I love some of their sung masses and stuff. And I look at the Latin Mass Catholics, and I think, yeah, you guys, I respect you as well.
Mhm.
Um, and I look at some of my evangelical friends and think, yeah, you're filled with the Holy Spirit, and that's fantastic too. It's like watching the Book of Acts being played out. It's like watching Pentecost, and yeah, I can see that you're casting out demons and you're healing people, and that's great, and that's that. But negotiating my way through all these different influences, and I don't quite believe in sola scriptura. I think there's more to it than that. I think it would be stupid to think that all our understanding of Christianity and everything that matters stopped the moment that the Gospels were had been the ink was dry, or the wax was been cut of the Gospels. That doesn't seem right either. So I think, but do you know what I mean? It's quite
Yeah.
hard to be
Yeah.
exactly where it should be.
I feel I feel like since I took my family out of that rather large church, I felt like, and we did it anticipating that God would place us, replace us. He would put us to work. And so a common prayer that I recite is Moses's, the one attributed to Moses, the 90th Psalm, which where he ends, establish the work of my hands. Like that's my constant prayer. And I think implicit in that and necessary for that is my most important work obviously is fostering these truths in my family. And I'm aware that a community of other like-minded people striving to live for Jesus would be a great help in that. And I've experienced that at different times in my youth, just the love, the the Christian love of other people. Um, I've benefited from it and I've seen how it helps. And so it's not really great to feel like an island, you know? Um, and so I
No,
find myself like drawn to different traditions. Like maybe my favorite people that I know personally right now are all Catholics, devout
right.
traditional Catholics. And I love their family units and their sense of community. And so I'm constantly praying for permission to just let me do this or that, or lead me to something. Like I follow Spiridon Bailey, who I know you're aware of.
Mm.
And his genuineness and the truth of what he's saying, it always just resonates. And I could do that. Can I have a green light on that? Or
They're quite strict on stuff. The Orthodox, like I don't think you're allowed to have oral sex.
I'm okay with that.
Are you,
That's okay. Like that's an interesting no,
I
but I
just
mean,
I think it would be shame to have to in your marital relations it would be shame to have too much prescription from your church.
I can definitely see that. Yeah. And there's a scripture, and again, like I guess, yeah, you couldn't reside there truthfully if you're not adhering to their laws, I suppose. But
I-
yeah,
Is Psalm 90, Lord, thou hast been our refuge from one generation to another, before the mountains were brought forth, or ever the earth and the heaven were made? Thou art God for everlasting, world without end.
I'm so impressed with your memory, James.
Well, I do it every day. I mean,
Yeah.
I do my Pilates exercises in the morning to that. There's one
So
I
what
have
what
I have a designated psalm for each. So, well, I mean, the translation I've got is Lord, thou hast been our refuge from one generation to another, before the mountains were brought forth, or ever the earth and the world were made. Thou art God for everlasting, world without
that's
end.
it. I have the English Standard, which isn't as good. I need you to recommend a Bible for me that for various reasons. But
I use two. So I use
okay.
the King James for the language, and because so many of the phrases, sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. That's what Matthew 6, isn't it? Um, the end of Matthew 6. Um, you've got all these wonderful sonorous phrases. And then I've got the new, the NIV, the New International Version, just because that was very kindly given to me by an actor, a famous English actor called James Fox. James Fox was big in the late 60s. Um, he was in a movie with Mick Jagger called Performance. He was the hottest star in England, and then he sort of found God, and because at the same time he realized how evil the industry was. And anyway, he gave me that. He gave me the
Wow.
the NIV.
Was Performance one of those Luciferian Mick Jagger
Yeah,
movies?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Ken Anger? Was that the Ken Anger film?
Yes, it was
Yeah.
the one that Ken Anger shot himself or whatever, did or chopped his head off or something.
Wow. And one of those stars found
He
God and gave you a Bible.
he joined this kind. You'd almost call it a cult. He became part of an evangelical. He spent the next 10 years of his life sort of doing the Lord's work.
Was that like the Vineyard movement? What the Jesus
Look
movement?
him up. Look him up. You'll find it in his wiki entry. Um,
Yeah.
uh, um, but I just think, yeah, Psalm 90 is the days of our age are three score years and ten, isn't it?
Yeah,
For
well,
though
it's the
men
one
be
you
so
it's the
strong
one
that
you
they come
started
before
quoting
thee,
from memory. Yeah.
though men
Yeah.
be so
You
strong that they come
you
to fall
return man
before
to
thee,
the dust and say,
yet
Return,
is
O
their
children.
strength but labor and sorrow, so soon passeth away and we are gone.
Yeah. And then it closes, let the favor of the Lord our God be upon us and establish the work of our hands upon us. Yes, establish the work of our hands.
Yeah. Um, it's it is one of the it is what I think it might be the oldest of all the Psalms.
It says
It
it's attributed to Moses.
Yeah, it's the sort of the foundational Psalm. So I suppose every time I say these Psalms, I'm asking God the same things that you're asking him.
Yeah.
I, he gives you treats, I find. He gives you little treats sometimes and says, "Look, I've got your back." When you ask for him for help on things, when you're feeling muddled, he sometimes helps clear things out. But living a godly life is I find quite it's hard. You're constantly having to think about it, aren't you?
Yes. And I find it alienating to hold these views that are so they're so opposed to the cultural values, essentially, you know?
Well, it's like it's very hard to live. It's like being. I probably the best example is being a friar rather than a monk, because monks are stuck in a monastery, so they're surrounded by other monks. But friars have to go out into the world. So you're a man of God, but you're living in the world, and you've got the temptations of the world, and you've got all around you. What do I say yes to? What do I say no to?
Yeah. And how do I bear witness, as you, you kind of relegated to a position of um, nobody really cares much about if you're not winning here, it's you're kind of not noticed, I think. If you're not competing and striving and climbing a ladder, and if your values aren't, everybody's kind of running the same race, but we're going in the opposite direction. That's kind of how I feel um, like
Oh,
Pilgrim's Progress, for example. You, I've read that a couple times now. You'll have read it, and I found that to be really encouraging and affirming because it is like that. It's like you're kind of all alone because everyone's responsible for their own state of being and their own choices. And so you're plodding along and you're bogged down and you have people who come and pretend to help you. You get the worldly wise man who says, "Look, you just need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and follow me and I'll get you to the top of this firm and I'll do or whatever it is." And do you remember that story?
I I would have done Pilgrim's Progress when I was at my prep school, so like 50 years ago. So it's quite a while since I.
I recommend it. I revisit it maybe. Um, there's a good
Um,
Audible version of it that's read by a really good British actor. I can't remember his name, Max something, but it's really enjoyable.
listen, I'll have to check that out. I'm going to go soon because my wife's made a cake and it's tea time. Um, but what was I going to say to you? Did you did you ever listen to the podcast I did with an Illuminati assassin, Reynolds, somebody Reynolds?
Yeah. Oh man. I actually corresponded with him once. What do you make of him?
Well, I don't know what I make of him, but some of the stuff he said was very interesting and useful. I thought one of the most interesting points he made was the difference between being on the side of God and being on the side of the forces of darkness. And he said that when he was working for the forces of darkness, like you do get given these superpowers. Like you can be given superhuman strength. You can kill people effortlessly. You can do whatever cool stuff you want to do. But you pay a terrible price for this in the form of your sort of um well, I mean, obviously you pay a terrible price. But he said that with Christianity, it's the other way around. That nothing comes easy. It's you have to everything is hard. You have to work at it. But the satisfaction it gives you is much more enduring, and it's not that sort of it's not an instant fix solution. It's a kind of slow burn project. You're always trying to improve.
Yeah. Yeah, my pace isn't where I'd like it to be. And it's like that foresight and it's hard to bear in mind some days where you're working towards your ultimate good. Um,
But
yeah,
what
it
is
is.
it? What are we working towards? I mean, are we working towards martyrdom? Are we working towards? Are we sitting at the right hand of God?
I
What's the deal?
I think it's the new heaven and the new earth. It's the better version of this. It's the original intent. It's kind of like round two or something. It's just this, everything you like about what is here and none of what you don't,
Well,
assuming
there's no
nobody
sea
chooses
according
to
to
muck it up
Revelation.
again.
No more sea. That's sad.
No more what?
No more sea. No more ocean. Yeah, it's
No,
gonna mess you up with your surfing, dude.
I like that about here. So why would,
In Revelation, it says no more sea. You look it up.
Hmm.
I'll try and find
Maybe the sea was metaphor for
dude,
something bad.
I've got to break the bad news now. Hang on, let's have a look. Um,
Are you trying to
okay.
derail me?
I'm sorry. You may
Stealing
have
my
to
hope?
listen. No more sea. Revelation.
Any
I've got to
particular
break the
sea
bad
or
news.
just in general?
And
Oh,
I saw Revelation 21:1. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And you know what that means? No more surfing.
that would be something better then, I guess. Cloud
Well,
surfing?
yeah,
Flying?
what's
Flying
going to be better
maybe?
than what's better than surfing?
Nothing that I've experienced as far as an activity here.
Yeah,
it's what fox hunting is to you, I suppose, for me.
yeah, exactly. That's it. Because you're
It'll
living
be
totally
there.
in the moment, in the moment.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And you almost don't even remember what just happened when the moment's passed. Um, like if I
It's
after I
just
just
like whoosh.
yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's it.
Wow, wow. I can't believe that just happened. Whoa, whoa.
And then at the end of the day, after a long session, you come back and you're like trying to remember like what the moment, you're trying to hold on to that moment. You want to relive it, and it's almost never there. You just have a vague sense of it, like, yeah, that one was good, that one was good.
I don't know. Actually, I would say after a day's hunting, you can remember every moment. Like you know how fighter pilots from the First and Second World War can remember every maneuver of the dogfight. In the same way, you could just go through that hedge, that jump, that moment where I got cut up as I was trying to jump a hedge, and a horse went in front of me, and my horse had to, yeah.
Those are more intellectual exercises, I guess. So it's a more full experience you and the fighter pilots are having. I think surfing, once you get the mechanics of it, it's more of just kind of like checking out, trying not to manipulate. You're not manipulating the wave. The wave, you're just harnessing it, sort of. You're just
Oh, that
gonna
sounds
be,
wonderful. I'd love to
yeah.
be good at that. We could be talking forever,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna have my tea now. Um, Tanner, it's been lovely talking to you.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it so much. Thank you, James.
Will anyone watch this?
Yeah, I mean, I'll put it together. I don't know, I'll do an intro and an outro. I'll put the two together, or maybe I'll do them separate and I'll just post them up through my Substack. At least you and I can watch it.
Yeah,
I can
I
share it
listen.
around.
If it's just us, I have no problem at all. It was just great talking to you.
Yeah, it's been great talking to you too. Do you want to hear this message I got from Shane Reynolds off the I guess it would be inappropriate for me to read it here, but right, I should stop recording before I read you this
Yeah, I
fascinating
think so.
message.
Yeah, you don't want to. If it's a private message.
What did I call him? His name's Nathan. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
one sec. Actually, I'm not going to read that.